This is the Sunday Business Page with John Delano.
Good morning, I'm John Delano. Welcome to another edition of the Sunday Business Page. And our very special guest this morning is John Dick, who is the founder and CEO of a company right here in Pittsburgh called Civic Science, Inc. John, welcome to the show. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too, John. It's been a long time.
It has been a while, and I thought, because I read something recently about Civic Science, that you would be a great guest this morning. First, tell the audience a little bit about your company. What exactly is Civic Science?
Sure. Probably put most simply, we're a market research company, but we gather huge amounts of survey data from the internet, millions of surveys a day about anything you can possibly imagine. And that's really important because we say that everything affects everything, and that's never been more true than it is today. But we built some technology. Well, some folks right here in Carnegie Mellon built a platform that allows us to analyze all of that data in really intricate ways and try to make sense of the crazy world we're all living in, and help inform business leaders and civic leaders on how to make the best decisions given the nature of the world.
Well, that's part of the reason I wanted you on today, because I saw a study that really analyzed this pandemic and the war in Ukraine on consumers and their attitudes. And this, of course, is very important if you're in the business community trying to sell to people. So let me first ask you about the pandemic. Are people feeling pretty stressed out over the pandemic these days?
I mean, not nearly as much. I mean, it certainly lost its grip on our psyche, unfortunately replaced by other serious and stressful things. But I think generally attitudes toward COVID, confidence being in public, large public places, travel, going back to work, they're as high as we've seen them since the pandemic began.
And the fact is that you think people are actually better off, or some people are better off now than they were pre-pandemic?
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer, because I would say economically, a large part of the American population is better off financially. If you had maintained your job and your income through the 2 years of COVID, and you think of all the areas in the first year that you weren't spending money, vacations you weren't taking, dry cleaning bills you weren't picking up, if you'd maintained your income throughout that period, you stockpiled a lot of savings. I mean, household savings in the U.S. is up almost $1.5 trillion since the beginning of the pandemic. Now, that's not to say that there aren't others who've been really badly affected, but there's still a lot of Americans that I think fared pretty well financially through all of this. Now, that doesn't speak to all the mental and health implications that it's had on a lot of people, regardless of how well off financially you are, but at least financially, there's a lot of Americans that are doing okay.
And what about the war in the Ukraine? And we only have about a minute and a half. How is that impacting consumers right now?
Well, it's certainly accelerating the inflationary pressures that we were already beginning to feel, not just not gas prices, which of course grab all the headlines, but grocery prices and lots of other areas. And so that is beginning to erode at some of that financial well-being, and people have a pretty pessimistic outlook for the economy. I mean, we study economic sentiment and consumer confidence, and it's at record lows right now.
How should those who need to deal with consumers, small businesses and the like, how do they react to this? How helpful is this information?
Well, I think it obviously depends on who their customers are, right? And again, all of these factors, the COVID, inflation, gas prices, the war, it's affecting different consumers in different ways. So it depends on who your customer is. So you need to understand that first and foremost. But if there are cost and price concerns with your consumers, you have to think about offering them value and offering them discounts and coupons. Pricing is the one thing that a lot of businesses can control. And this is definitely a time you need to be thinking about that.
Final question to you, John. In terms of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, does that mean that consumers are less likely to purchase any certain kinds of products? Do you have to be careful about your relationship with Russia, for example?
Oh, absolutely. In 10 years of studying consumers, I've never seen anything that the U.S. consumers are more aligned on than against Russia. And their demand of companies to stop selling in Russia, to have operations in Russia, there will be backlashes for companies who ignore what consumers are telling them to do as it relates to Russia.
Well, John Dick, founder and CEO of a great company here in Pittsburgh called Civic Science that really analyzes how consumers react to issues. Thank you, sir, very much for being with us this morning. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching this edition of the Sunday Business Page. Have a great Sunday, everybody.